Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
Well, hello, and welcome back to, or welcome to, if it's your first time, the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Thanks for coming along on the journey of this show that is designed to be a resource for those who work in and around PLM. The Digital Enterprise Society is a forum for the exchange of ideas surrounding the tools, processes, and practices used across the product lifecycle. To learn more, visit digitalenterprisesociety.org. My name is Thom Singer, and I co-host this show along with Craig Brown, an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Craig, how you doing today?
I'm great. Looking forward to talking with Martin.
So Craig and I have been together at ConX 19, the IPX event that was here in San Diego, and we have had the pleasure to sit down and interview some really cool people face to face. And I think this episode is going to be one of those that you're going to listen to twice, because this is going to be a good one. And I think that Martin and Craig are going to geek out a little bit on this episode. I'm just telling you, as we prepared, I got that vibe. Each week, we try to bring to this podcast interesting interviews and other ideas that will help all of the listeners enhance and grow their careers. So today, we are with Martin Haket from ASML, and he is the lead CM architect. Hey, Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So what's your backstory? How did you get to be the lead CM architect at ASML?
Interesting story. I think I'm working for ASML for 20 years now. I started in the software environment, always interested in configuration management. There were a lot of, I think as most companies struggle with configuration management, we had a lot of programs. I just happened to stumble into those programs. And at one moment in time, in the final program, I basically stepped in, became CM lead architect, because I also at the same time introduced the CM2 model at ASML. So kind of, it's something that you roll into. It's not something that you apply for.
How did you get to be the leader, though? Where did you go to school? What kinds of degrees?
Many people said so. I stumbled into Ken Black in 2005 when I went to a very small conference at Airbus, somewhere in the northern part of Germany. I only remembered it because I was really, really sick when I went there. And I met Ken Black, and he was telling me about only 2 signatures per document. And I thought he was absolutely crazy. I thought that the guy doesn't understand anything, but I was intrigued. So then I went to CM2 classes in Bristol, I remember, and it was Ken Black teaching me, and basically that was the spark. So pretty fast after that, I tried to introduce CM2 at ASML. I think we were not ready at that moment. But
when you say ready, willing to learn or able to listen? I mean, sometimes we're not ready because we're just busy. Sometimes we're not ready because we don't want to be.
I think knowledge.
Okay. Interesting.
I think you have to have knowledge to understand what your problem is and where you can find the solution. And maybe one person thinks he knows where the solution is, doesn't mean that the rest of the organization knows where the solution is.
Right.
And I was just there with CM2 knowledge, fresh out of training. It's difficult to explain to others what CM2 means if you're fresh out of training. So basically, I guess I wasn't capable of selling it well enough with all the other stuff going on in the company. So
how did you eventually convince them, though? Something happened.
Well, something happened. ASML grew rapidly.
Okay.
So when I started it was about 5,000 employees. It's now 24,000. So that is a rapid growth. With rapid growth, basically means that if you have if you're struggling, for instance, with configuration management, that basically means that if you start growing, it tends to expand exponentially.
Right.
So at one moment in time, after several programs in the CM, our current final program, there's always a final program, started, and the program before that, we tried to define configuration management ourselves.
Okay.
We want to define all the processes. We want to define how we do numbering, etc. And basically what happened, that blew up in our faces.
Okay.
Because before you know it, you're defining the whole world and the galaxy around it.
Mm-hmm.
So the next step, they started all over again and they said, we want to do greenfield. What if we start all over again? Start all over again, but fresh. And which standards would we use? So they started looking at the EIA 649 and etc. But they soon figured out that's only the what you need to do, not how to do it.
How,
and I was there at that moment. I said, I know how. Go to CM2.
And so you had the opportunity of a greenfield.
Yes.
And an inadequate other choice. And so this is how you know. This is good insight for everybody. I was asked by somebody after our sessions this morning about, hey, is this really worth it? And I reminded this particular person, he's a different industry than my experience. I said, well, sometimes you have to wait for the crisis.
Yes.
It's unfortunate, but sometimes you need the crisis in order to be the catalyst to allow you to go here. What you do in the meantime is get smart. Make sure you understand, talk to people like yourselves who have the experience. Car companies, aircraft companies, we all have traceability requirements, if nothing else, and CM2 helps that a lot. Yep. A lot of our listeners, just like when you and I first got to know each other a couple years ago on conference calls, I kept asking, and took like 3 calls, what's ASML? Remind me again. And I'll tease everybody for a moment. Everything you guys do online involves their products.
Yep.
So tell us what ASML does.
So ASML basically is, we make lithography machines.
Okay.
And lithography machines are used in the chip industry as the core machine that drives the Moore's law. So basically, I know it very well in Dutch. It's for me difficult to explain.
You're doing fine.
In
Keep
English.
going.
It's kind of a slides. If you have that slide shows, well, basically what we do is we project an image on a wafer that's then processed further by the chip industry, by the big chip makers. And basically our machine drives how small they can get it.
So one of your colleagues described it as, we're the cameras that make the chips in the world that let you connect everywhere.
Yep. If we're not there, basically, we stated if we're not there, the world would be dark.
Right. And so everyone, this is just amazing. I don't really think you have a competitor, which I find amazing.
Well, we do, but not for the latest and greatest technology. So our latest technology took us about 20 years to develop. And somebody said it's comparable to putting a man on the moon.
So your big customers are the Intels of the world?
Intel, Samsungs, those guys.
Wow.
Because you need a little bit of money to buy one of our machines.
Yeah, but they got a lot of money because they sell it to all of us.
Yes. Yeah, the return on investment on those machines is shocking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so now we know what the machines are. You and I both know the importance of configuration management. When somebody walks up to you and says, you know, Martin, I just don't get it. Is there something you normally can identify with them, or how do you go about it to convince them that, you know, you really do need to take a look at this? There's something important.
A struggle I have for many years. It is, so for me, things are obvious. If you think in the CM2 model, like you have intervention resources, you're spending money on things you shouldn't be spending money on. A lot of time that is blurred by a lot of other things in the lean stuff, in the let's go agile, let's go all that stuff. And then you come there and say, no, this is just what we call intervention resources. And it's because of your data is not clear, concise, and valid. It's not existing. A lot of people don't get it.
Yeah. I one of your colleagues we were chatting with earlier in the week, and we talked about this ratio of purposeful invention, or the money or people that it takes to do something you intend to do, versus the money it takes to do all this intervention, this correction, right? And if that ratio isn't greater than 1, you got problems.
Yep.
Right? Your goal is to reduce intervention, so you have more money, more time to work on the improving your products.
Yeah, but the problem is, do you recognize your intervention resources? If you're hiring escalation managers,
probably,
and a lot of us do, that's not recognized as intervention resources, because that guy is useful, because he's managing our escalations. we
there's just
need
the
him.
Yeah, I get it.
We
This
need
is-
him. And so try to convince that guy that he actually shouldn't be there.
Well, yeah, and this is a management metric I'm
Yes.
talking about. That if you're hiring more of them than you are the folks inventing and innovating, maybe you're in the wrong business, or maybe the business is ill-defined, or maybe you really don't have the processes down, the
Yeah, but
CM2-driven processes.
I think it's also when things become more complex, we start hiring more people to manage the complexity, but that basically makes it more complex.
Yeah, it
And
might
you
be better
end-
to have less.
And
Right?
yeah, so you end up with a constantly growing organization which doesn't produce more.
Right. At least
But-
not at the ratio you were expecting based upon the hiring.
Yes, and making that visible is difficult because most of our companies I don't think are very mature, but you see all those consultancy firms come in, and the first thing they want to do is KPIs because they learn you need to measure to be able to become better. But the problem is if you're immature, what you are measuring is
don't.
absolutely worth nothing.
Right.
So if
You don't even know what measures to go after.
and
right?
what you measure, even you start measuring stuff.
Well, you'll fix it because you can get feedback, but now you might be fixing the wrong thing.
Absolutely. So
Right.
you start doing absolutely the wrong things, basically because you are measuring something that isn't measurable, and you think you can look at those numbers and see that you improve.
So what would your advice be if I came to you and said, well, okay, I've been measuring and I improved my KPI, but I'm still not getting results. What do I do?
One of the steps we're taking now is try to look at benefits management.
Okay.
So instead of looking at the KPIs, we as architects look at what do we think this can bring to our company.
Okay.
And basically, we call it the two hands. That's the hands. That's all the fingers that we as CM architects think, we can improve all kinds of different things. Now you start talking to the business and start asking, what if I would give you this? What would it bring to you? I don't need the measurement yet, just everyday life. And they come up with like, if you give me that, and that's one of your fingers you have, if you give me that, I can reduce 3 people in my staff. I can gain 10 million per year, whatever they come up with. Basically, what you see is that the business is looking for a lot of stuff they can improve. I'm giving them some other stuff, but at one moment in time you align. And that's where you meet with what you think CM can bring to the company and what the company is looking for.
Okay.
Interesting thing is that person can tell you exactly what it will bring him. 3 people,
so-
10 million.
Yeah, it's in his language.
It's
in-
his language.
Yeah, what they're, yeah.
And basically
interesting.
what you start doing is start work with them.
Yeah.
And then you build the capability, but I'm not measuring all over the company what it would bring. I'm not selling it to CEOs like, I can bring so much. I'm just doing it for that very small part of the business. And once I have it there, now I get a little bit of maturity. Now I can start measuring.
Right, and then you can build momentum, and then
Yes.
really, especially in large companies, that osmosis will take over.
Yep.
People will see that and say, well, I want that too. What do I need to do? Right?
Yep.
It's interesting.
It's also easier to bring something to another sector if you're shown in one of their other sectors like, hey, there we did 10 million.
Right.
And before you know it, they're screaming for it.
Well, yeah, because they don't want to be left out. And actually, you might be getting the investment resources because you are hitting the numbers, so to speak.
But first
right?
they didn't want to listen because they didn't understand you. So
But a lot of times it is ignorance. They just need to be shown a way or even an example. A lot of people are better with analogies, right?
Yep.
When you folks were talking earlier in the week, you talked about the impact matrix and the importance of the impact matrix. Can you elaborate on that? I mean, when we do a change management or change assessment, you have to consider multiple functions of the company.
Yep.
And I really like the graphic you had. I started writing it down on my notes. But I think at times we don't do adequate impact analysis, probably because we don't know the multiple areas we need to consider. How have you guys addressed that? And what do you think we all should do? Is there some learning, or is there also a standard that should be improved, or what's up?
the standard from CM2 is the impact matrix.
Okay.
But the moment we start working with it, at one moment in time, I start realizing that's for the CM part of the impact matrix. So the CM part of impact analysis is for decision making.
Okay.
But if you start working with development and engineering or all the other sectors, you figure out, well, CM wants to know which part is going to change. How much money will it take to update a document? That's what CM wants to know. But if you start deep diving into the sectors, they have to do a lot of other stuff to actually figure out, why would I change this document? And if I change it, is it only part of the document? Is it an attribute? There is so much more data. And that doesn't fit in the impact matrix. So we build an impact matrix tool, homegrown, because we couldn't get it in the systems we have. But now you're losing a lot of data.
Right.
Because all these sectors are boiling up all kinds of detailed information, which you don't want to present to the change board that actually has to make the decision. It's a CRB, but we call it the change board. And so for us, that's why we came to that pyramid image where we say the top part, that is CM. The lower part is where all the sectors are. Problem with all the sectors is they have all their own tools.
Right.
And they don't communicate very well. Interfacing between tools is difficult, especially in detailed information.
Right.
So what our goal now is twofold. One of it is, let's do not connect all those sectors horizontally. Let's try to bring information to one level up and then communicate via the impact matrix from sector to sector, from tool to tool.
So that communication would be the same impact matrix to these different functions. That would be a very good step forward.
And then the other step is, if you look at model-based working, models will tend to grow over different sectors. So then you get the horizontal integration going. But that is, for a lot of companies, that will take some time before they're pretty mature in that stuff.
Well, and the few folks that, at least my experience recently, the few folks that are able to model across those sectors are all considered adjunct or extra. They're not considered mainstream.
No.
And so they don't maybe have the influence you would hope they would have. And it just takes time. You're right. It'll grow. It'll eventually get there. I had one other note that I had to look about. You guys brought up this point about telecom industry as an example of having standards and the need for standards that allow tools and others to interchange data.
Yep.
Can you give us the short summary of that, and let's get the word out. We need some help on standards.
Yep. So what you see now is we have multiple tools in our company, and if we want to do an impact analysis, that basically means those tools need to be able to communicate via what we propose to be the impact matrix as a mean. But if those tools are not capable of interfacing with one standard format, for instance, for an impact matrix, will never work. We have to, as companies, then build custom interfaces from one tool to another, and eventually all the vendors will start striving for, I will build the impact matrix, the rest will interface with me.
And then it'd be right. So then we end up with multiple impact matrices that don't communicate, which that just propagates.
And everybody is investing in something that we could reuse as an industry, and it's not one industry; it's all industry, because in principle the process is the same.
So to summarize then, how do we get this done so that we don't have these competing impact matrices from each solution provider or tool builder?
Yeah, so that's a bit I'm struggling with. So we had.
Well, I guess we'll keep talking.
Yes, that helps. I think the word is out now. That's one that helps.
That helps.
I think Joe Anderson from IPX made a great step forward, stating, "Okay, we have a standard from IPX, the CM2600. Why don't we make a committee that is not only from the industries but also from the vendors, and start working together on this?"
Well, and you and I, in an early version of that, the CM2600, we got together to kind of prove it using Siemens' help. I'm with you. I think we got to get that group. It doesn't need to be those of us that were on the first one, but a group of people like-minded that want to solve this just need to get together. And then, the more we start to use it, the more it'll pick up steam. And just like Siemens originally, the vendors, at least a couple of them, will see the value. They'll do it. The rest will have to come, and it may take a few more years than we would like, but we'll get there. So, Martin, it's been wonderful chatting with you. I've enjoyed the last couple of years as we've interacted on the CM2600, and now seeing it come to fruition. I hope I see you in the future.
Absolutely.
But I'm the PLM elder. I'm the guy who's supposed to be retiring. So we'll see. And
I'm
with
the
that,
next generation to retire.
yeah, but you got a little more work to do. Make
Yeah,
sure we
but-
finish this stuff. So anyways, thanks again. And Tom, it's back to you.
So Craig is doing a really bad job at retirement. That's the thing I've learned working with Craig the last several months is Craig is doing a very bad job of that. Hey, Martin, one thing I love to ask everybody before we let them leave the podcast is a little bit of career advice for people who are listening. If someone is just sort of starting their journey along this PLM path, what advice would you give to somebody as far as how can they grow their career?
Well, the joke I always make is I made some stupid mistakes in my career and ended up in configuration management. If you turn it around, I think configuration management is the position in a company where you can do almost anything. You interact with every sector in the business. It's a great place to work. You can have so much influence. How you get there, I didn't plan for it. But what helps is if you build up knowledge on a lot of different parts of the industry.
You know, Martin, I am interacting with a couple other companies, and the one of them on this key point, he said, you know, the folks that are really good at that are naturally curious.
Yes.
They just want to learn about everything.
Yep.
So I think for those of you that are naturally curious, you need to get into CM2. You'll have a blast because you'll be able to go across companies, not deep in companies, and then you'll be able to go to other industries too.
Yeah,
by the way.
you will be sought after. We are looking for people that understand this, and they are very, very hard to find. So that's the other call out. If you're at schools, start pushing your schools that you want knowledge about this.
Nice. Well, Martin, thank you so much for being a guest here on the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, and to everybody who's listening, join us next week for more thoughts, ideas, and information in and around product lifecycle management. The Digital Enterprise Society is the place for the exchange of ideas around digital manufacturing tools. Check us out at digitalenterprisesociety.org.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more